She almost didn't take the shift. Clara had been on her feet since 6 that morning, when the evening manager called asking if she could cover Viridia, the kind of restaurant where the napkins cost more than her hourly wage. She'd already changed into sweats. She said yes anyway. Rent was due. It was always due. The manager met her at the staff entrance and leaned in before she could tie her apron. "Table 9, he said quietly. "Don Costello's table. Don't engage unless spoken to. Don't linger." A pause. "Just be invisible." Clara had spent 5 years in a pediatric oncology ward. She was not particularly good at being invisible. Don Vincent Costello sat at the center of Viridia the way powerful men always sit, like the room arranged itself around them. Dark suit, no tie, a face that gave nothing away. Across from him, say his 7-year-old twins were the opposite of everything he projected. Fidgety, bright-eyed, exchanging quick glances and suppressed smiles. They weren't speaking, not with their mouths. Their hands moved between them in fast, private bursts. Clara knew ASL. Her mother had taught deaf children for 30 years, and Clara had grown up with the language the way most kids absorb a second tongue. Without effort, without thinking of it as anything special. She understood what the twins were signing before she even reached the table. Leah had just told her brother, "I wish someone here would actually talk to us." Clara smoothed her apron and walked over. She didn't address the Don first. She knelt to the children's level, waited until she had both their eyes, and let her hands move. "Hello, my name is Clara. Are you enjoying the breadsticks?" Leo grabbed his sister's arm. Leah's face opened into something so purely joyful it almost hurt to look at. The expression of a child who has spent a long time being invisible in a room and has just been seen. They'd been to this restaurant a dozen times. The staff spoke to them too loudly, or not at all, looked past them like furniture their father had brought along. "You know sign language?" Leah signed, barely containing herself. "My mother taught me," Clara replied, smiling. "It's a beautiful language." Leo leaned in, suddenly bold. "Can you ask Papa if we can have the chocolate lava cake? He never lets us." Clara laughed, quiet and genuine. She glanced up at the Don. He was already watching her. His expression hadn't shifted exactly, but something had tightened in it. The twins were looking at this stranger with a brightness they rarely turned toward him, and whatever Costello felt about that, it wasn't warmth. "That's enough." Not loud. Final. The words landed like a hand pressing down. Clara rose immediately, her face flushing. "I'm sorry, sir. I was just taking their dessert order." "You'll address me when you have something to bring me," he said. "They are children. They don't make decisions at my table." The twins' faces fell. Leah looked down at her hands. Leo stared at the tablecloth. Clara gave a small nod, pressed her notepad to her side, and took a half step back. She kept her expression composed. She'd learned that in the oncology ward. How to be the still point in someone else's storm. She was about to turn toward the kitchen when she saw the water. It wasn't anything obvious. A waiter was moving toward the table from the left. Young, unfamiliar, not someone she'd seen in the evening briefing. Carrying a tall pitcher of water, moving at the right pace, wearing the right uniform. But his brow was damp. The room was cool. His jaw carried a small, involuntary twitch on the right side. And the water. In the amber light, it caught the glow at a slightly wrong angle. A faint, barely there sheen on the surface. The kind certain sedatives leave before they fully dissolve. 5 years in oncology, you learn to notice what doesn't fit. Something is wrong. She didn't reason through it. She just moved. She let Costello's sharp tone hit her like a startle. A half step backward. And her arms swung out to the side, not toward the pitcher, but toward the tall glass of cranberry juice at the table's edge. It went over fast, a wide red arc across the white linen catching the leg of Costello's trousers, spreading dark and immediate through the fabric. The restaurant went silent. Leo and Leah pressed their hands to their mouths. Costello looked down at the stain. Then, slowly, he looked up. "I'm so sorry," Clara started. "It was an accident. An accident." He rose from his chair. Standing, he seemed to fill more space than the room had available. He looked at her the way you look at something that has used up its very last chance. "You interrupted my dinner. You overstepped with my children. And now you've made a spectacle of us both in front of every person in this room." Around them, diners had gone still, some staring openly, others performing interest in their plates. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a fold of cash, and dropped it on the stained cloth without counting it. "For the bill. And the dry cleaning." His gaze came back to her, flat and final. "You're fired. Get your things." Not shouted, pronounced. Each word a door closing. Clara didn't cry. She gathered what was left of her dignity and she walked out. Behind her, Leah. A choked, guttural sound. One of the few the girl ever made out loud. Then Leo's voice, low and stricken. "Papa, no." Costello sat back down. He nodded at the manager who had materialized at his elbow. He did not look at his children. Clara got her coat from the staff room and pushed through the service door into the cold night. She stood on the pavement with her eyes closed for a moment, just breathing. She wasn't thinking about the job. She was thinking about the water, about the waiter, about whether she'd actually stopped it or only delayed something she hadn't fully understood. She hadn't imagined it. She was almost certain. But she was a fired waitress. Nobody listens to a fired waitress. She started walking. The drive home was the quietest the car had ever been. The twins sat on opposite sides of the back seat, rigid and withdrawn, refusing to look at their father. Not signing. Not even looking at each other. Their silence was its own kind of statement. "She was careless," Costello said finally. "These things happen." Leo didn't move. Leah's hands rose, slow and deliberate. She was the only one who ever talked to us there. Costello looked at the road. Something small and uncomfortable had lodged in his chest, not the clean satisfaction of restored order. Something else. Something that prickled when he pressed on it. He ignored it. Tomorrow it would be forgotten. He almost believed that. Inside the mansion, the twins went to their rooms without a word. No lingering in the hallway. No requests for water. They just went. And the silence they left behind filled the space like smoke. Costello poured a scotch, stood by the window. He didn't drink it. He just held the glass, staring at the city spread out below, lit and indifferent, and entirely uninterested in the thing turning over in his mind. He set the drink down untouched and turned from the window. The phone buzzed. Marco. His second-in-command only called at this hour when something had gone wrong. "Boss, we have a situation." Marco arrived within the hour, tablet in hand, expression grim. "The Moretti family. Their consigliere was spotted 2 blocks from Viridia tonight. No business in our territory." He set the tablet on the desk. "We pulled exterior footage. Found Rico Moretti himself." Costello looked at the still image. Rico didn't make personal appearances without purpose. If he was that close to the restaurant tonight, it wasn't coincidence. "That's not the part you need to see," Marco said. He swiped to a different file. "I had the team pull Viridia's interior feed. Standard procedure. Checking if any of their people were inside." He pressed play. The dining room filled the screen. Wide angle, high corner. Costello watched himself enter with the children. Watched them sit. He could see his own profile, closed, unapproachable. And across from him, the twins' faces, small and animated. He watched Clara approach. watched her kneel, watched his children light up. He was about to tell Marco to skip ahead when something at the frame's edge stopped him cold. Stop. A figure near the kitchen entrance. A waiter. Young, pitcher in hand. Pausing behind a marble pillar just outside the direct sightline. From the restaurant floor, it would read as professional patience, waiting for a gap in foot traffic. But the camera angle caught his hands. A small vial, produced beneath the serving tray in a single smooth motion. Uncapped, tipped into the pitcher, recapped and gone before the man had taken his next step. 3 seconds. Practiced. Costello's hand went flat on the desk. Play it again. Marco played it again. Costello leaned closer, his eyes tracking the waiter's hands, the pitcher, the table. For a long moment he said nothing. He was a man who had survived decades by trusting what he could see directly in front of him, and he was watching something he had been in the room for and had not seen at all. He watched Clara. Her eyes shifted. Just a fractional turn of the head. A small faltering in her posture. Then she looked at the pitcher, then at his children. He heard his own voice on the footage. That's enough. She rose. And as she did, she repositioned, not retreating, placing herself between the waiter and the table. He'd seen a woman flustered by a reprimand. That wasn't what this was. The waiter moved in to pour. Clara's arm swung. The glass went over. The red spread across the linen, and beneath the noise of his own rising voice, beneath the chaos he had mistaken for her incompetence, Clara's other hand brushed the waiter's arm. Small, almost imperceptible, enough to slosh a significant portion of the water onto the floor before it reached any glass. The threat dissolved, the evidence disappeared, and his own fury had provided the curtain. His Scotch glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. He didn't move to clean it up. He just stared at the screen, at the frozen image of Clara walking away, back straight, head up, carrying everything he'd thrown at her. She had saved his children, and he had fired her for it, in front of a room full of people, in front of Leo and Leah. "Boss." Marco's voice was careful. "Did you see what she—" "I saw it. Flat. Scraped clean." He wasn't looking at the tablet anymore. All of it. He sat with that for 3 seconds. Then, "Find her." "Boss? Every man we have?" He stood, and when he turned, Marco saw something he had almost never seen on this man's face. Raw, undisguised desperation. Employment records, transit cards, whatever you have to pull. That woman does not leave this city tonight. Do you understand me? Marco was already on the phone before he finished the sentence. Costello went upstairs. He pushed open the twins' playroom door slowly. Both children were inside, not playing, just existing in the same space the way kids do when they're upset and too young to fully name it. They looked up at him. Neither smiled. He crossed the room and crouched down. The motion felt foreign on him. He pointed to himself, then tried, clumsy, approximate, the sign for sorry. He wasn't sure he had it right. Leah looked at his hands, then at his face. Her hands came up. "You were mean. You made Clara cry." He had no answer for that. Leo reached down and picked up a folded piece of paper from the floor, a crayon drawing. 2 small figures holding hands with a taller woman, rendered in the earnest way of a child drawing something that matters to him. Underneath, in careful block letters, Clara. He held it against his chest and said nothing. The phone rang. Marco. Credit card activity. She bought a bus ticket. Leaves the Central Depot in 45 minutes. Costello was already moving. "Hold that bus. It does not leave." He looked at his children. "Get your coats. You're coming with me." The Central Bus Depot smelled of stale coffee and diesel. Fluorescent lights. Plastic chairs bolted to the floor, the kind of place built purely for people who need to be somewhere else. Clara sat near the back wall, backpack in her lap, coat still on, staring past the departure board without really seeing it. She looked like someone who had been holding herself together through something hard and had finally found a place where she could stop. She didn't see the black cars pull up outside. She felt the shift first, a ripple of unease moving through the people near the entrance, heads turning, a woman pulling her child a little closer. Then the doors opened. Don Vincent Costello walked through them. Clara's stomach dropped. He had come for her. In a bus station, with men in dark suits outside blocking the street, and she had no idea why. But her body understood the vocabulary of power well enough to know what it looked like when it came looking for you. She thought of the waiter. The water. He thinks I know too much. He came to make sure I stay quiet. Her hand tightened on the backpack strap. She stood up slowly, keeping her face still. His eyes swept the terminal. Found her. He stopped. And then, before she could calculate what to do, before she could decide whether to hold her ground or move, Leo and Leah pushed past him and ran. Leah got there first, arms wide, crashing into Clara with the full weight of a 7-year-old who has been holding it together for hours and is completely done doing that. Leo was right behind, quieter but just as certain, tucking himself against her side. Clara didn't think. Her arms went around both of them, and whatever fear had been in her chest a moment ago shifted into something else entirely. When she looked up, Costello was standing a few feet away. He wasn't flanked by anyone. He looked slightly undone. Collar open, the cold authority loosened at the edges. The mask wasn't there. What replaced it was harder to look at. Something private and unmanaged moving across his face. Shame, maybe. Or what shame looks like on a man who has rarely had cause to feel it. I saw the footage, he said, quiet. All of it. Clara waited. I understand what you did. He stopped, tried again. You protected my children. You made yourself a target for my anger because it was the cleanest way to stop that waiter without making things worse. And then his jaw tightened. I gave you exactly the reaction they were probably counting on. When I made myself the distraction, you handed me that role and I stepped into it without a second's hesitation. He wasn't performing this. She could see that. What I did was wrong, he said. I humiliated you in front of a room full of people. I took away your job. And then my men found your apartment. The eviction notice. He met her eyes. There's no excuse for any of it. But I'm asking you to forgive me. Leah tugged on Clara's sleeve. Her hands. Please don't go. Clara looked down at her. Then at Leo, watching her with that steady patience, too certain for his age. She looked back at Costello and let herself sit in the uncertainty for a moment. She was allowed to do that. She didn't owe him a fast answer. How did you know? He asked. About the water. She exhaled slowly. Before this job, I was a pediatric nurse. 5 years in oncology. You learn to watch for the thing that doesn't fit. His brow was damp. The room was cool. His hand had a tremor he was managing. And the water had a sheen. The way certain sedatives look before they fully dissolve. A pause. It was a feeling more than a calculation. I could have been wrong. You weren't, he said. The Moretti family. They've been looking for leverage. She absorbed that, the confirmation settling into her like cold water. She'd been right. The children had genuinely been in danger. There was no satisfaction in that. I want to offer you a different job, Costello said. Not the restaurant. A full-time guardian for Leo and Leah. Your own guest house on the property. A salary that means rent is something you never think about again. He held her gaze. You saw something my entire security team missed, and my children need someone who actually sees them." He paused. "So do I. I've proven I don't always see clearly on my own." Clara looked at the departure board. The number. Northwood. She looked at Leah, both hands pressed together in front of her chest, not signing, just holding. Waiting. "I have conditions," Clara said. Something in him eased. "Name them." "Structured ASL lessons for the twins. Real lessons, consistent schedule. Qualified teacher. Not optional. Done. I have access to security decisions that affect the children. If I see something, I act. No approval chain? Agreed. And you." She held his gaze. "You learn too. Whatever pace you can manage. But you try. They need that from you more than they need anything I can give them." He was quiet for a moment. Not resisting, just honest. "I'll try." "Okay," she said. She picked up her backpack. "Okay, I'll come back." Leah let out a small breath, barely a sound, and reached for Clara's hand. Leo reached for the other. They walked toward the exit like that. The three of them, Costello a step behind. Outside, Marco stood by the lead car. When he saw them come through the doors, Clara between the twins, the Dawn behind them, he opened the door without a word. But something in his face had shifted. Months passed. The mansion didn't transform overnight. It changed the way most real things do. Slowly, through accumulation. Shoes left in the wrong place. A crayon drawing taped to the refrigerator that no one took down. The sound of running feet between the kitchen and the garden. And laughter. Real laughter. Finding its way into rooms that had forgotten what it sounded like. Clara moved into the guest house on the east side of the property. She brought almost nothing. She didn't need much. Within 3 weeks, Leo was teaching her his and Leah's private shorthand, signs they'd invented between themselves over years of being misunderstood, a vocabulary built from necessity and kept like something precious. Clara recorded everyone in a small notebook on the kitchen counter. Sometimes Leah would flip through it and add a new entry, carefully, like contributing to something that mattered. The ASL tutor came twice a week. Mornings, in the sunroom. Clara sat with the children and, at first only occasionally, she'd look up to find Costello standing in the doorway. He never announced himself. Just watched, arms crossed. His face doing the thing it did when he was working to understand something and not quite ready to admit how much effort it was taking. After the 3rd week, she left a beginner's workbook on his desk. He didn't mention it, but the following Tuesday, the bookmark had moved. There was an afternoon in late spring, the kind that arrives without warning and stays like a gift, when Clara was in the garden with the twins under the big oak near the south wall. All 3 of them cross-legged in the grass, deep inside a story Leah had invented that had grown over the course of an hour into something enormous. Dragons that communicated exclusively in sign language. A princess who was also a doctor. A sea the color of Leo's favorite crayon. A very specific blue-green he called Ocean Sirius. Clara was laughing at a plot development involving the dragon discovering it was allergic to treasure when she noticed Costello at the garden's edge. He'd come from the house without his jacket, tie loosened. He wasn't trying to interrupt. He was just there, watching his children laugh, and there was something on his face she hadn't seen before. Not cold authority. Not the controlled vacancy of a man keeping himself at a careful distance. Just presence. He was simply there, watching something that moved him, and not trying to manage it. Leah spotted him and raised a hand. He raised one back. Then, slowly, with the concentration of a man still learning, each sign deliberate, his hand moved. 3 signs. Not perfect, a beat slow, but clear. "I love you." Leah's face opened like a window. "I love you," she signed back. Fast and certain, the way you say something you've been meaning to say for a long time." Leo looked at his father, then at his sister, then at Clara. She nodded at him. He smiled and turned back to the story. Costello stood there a moment longer, looking at his children like a man who understands, suddenly and fully, what he almost lost. Then he turned and walked back toward the house. Marco found him in the study later that evening. "The Moretti situation is fully closed," he said. "No loose ends." "Good." Costello didn't turn from the window. Marco lingered. "She's good for them, boss. Best thing that's happened to this house in a long time." A pause. "Best investment we ever made." Costello turned then. "She's not an investment, Marco." Quiet but certain. "She's family." Marco waited. "And a reminder." Costello glanced back toward the garden, the light there long gone gold. "I had a room full of security, couldn't see what she caught in 3 seconds. She didn't ask for credit, didn't try to impress me. She just did what needed doing. And I stood up from that table and punished her for it, in front of my own children." He stopped. Let that sit. "I almost let her get on that bus." Not dramatic, just a fact he carried. All the versions of the night where he hadn't gone to the depot, where the bus had pulled away, and he'd poured another scotch and told himself he had nothing to answer for. "I won't forget that," he said. He meant it. That night, Clara put the twins to bed. The usual ritual: water, stuffed animals arranged in their specific positions, a story told in sign, lights brought down to the level they preferred. She kissed Leah on the forehead and Leo on the top of his head, and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them in the dim light. They were asleep within minutes. They almost always were, these days. She pulled the door closed and walked down the long hallway toward the garden entrance and the guest house beyond. The house was still around her. Not the cold, held-breath stillness it used to carry, but something warmer. A house that had remembered what it was for. Outside, the sky was clear. The deep dark you only get at the city's edge, where the lights thin out and the stars have room. And she stood on the path and looked up. A missed bus to Northwood. 2 kids who needed someone to pay attention. A man who had nearly broken everything through pride and found just barely, just in time, enough honesty in himself to go to a bus station and ask for forgiveness. She thought of Leah pressing her hands together, not even signing, just holding on to the hope of it. Clara walked the rest of the way to the guest house, stepped inside, and closed the door softly behind her. Some things find you when you stop trying to plan them. If this story stayed with you, thank you for watching. New stories every week. We'd love to have you around.